I am truly pleased to bring my next guest to Crowdsource the Truth viewers. This guy is so important in one of the biggest stories of our times. I'm talking about Lev Parnas. Lev, thanks for joining me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jason.
I just want to let everybody know, you and I just spoke for the first time ever on the telephone yesterday. I've been aware of you for some time. I saw you testifying in Congress. You are incredibly important in the Russiagate story. Of course, you personally know Donald Trump. I think there's a lot of people, Lev, who maybe saw you in Congress on Wednesday and weren't quite sure who you are. Could you give us, just for people maybe who don't know, just your background, how you came to the U.S., what your involvement is here in general?
Sure. I immigrated to the United States in 1976 from the former Soviet Union. I was born in Odessa, Ukraine. I came here. I settled into Brooklyn, New York. Grew up in a very prominent Russian, Ukrainian, Jewish community called Little Odessa in the Bright Beach in New York. And I grew up, my father passed away when I was 11 years old. And I kind of grew up on the streets idolizing people like Donald Trump, idolizing the powerful, the rich. And that's what I wanted to be. And my whole life, I've been a successful businessman. I've worked on Wall Street. I've done international trade between the former Soviet Union, Russia, Ukraine. And that's where I built majority of my contacts that I was able to then obviously use in this scandal that we're dealing with today. And eventually mine and Trump's worlds collided when that night when he announced that he is going to run for president. And I decided to take my son, because my son was getting involved in politics, he was 16 at the time, wow, to the rally. And that's how it started. I mean, prior to that, Jason, I had not a single stitch of a bone of being involved in politics whatsoever. Never voted in my life prior to that. And then I just got swept up into this whole thing.
Wow. That's really something else. So at a certain point, you became involved to the extent that you were meeting with Rudy Giuliani. You were actually quite close with all of these guys. I was looking at this article here, which has got, I mean, this is almost like a dossier on you from these lawfare people. It's got all kinds of photos and everything of you. I mean, this is anybody who has any doubt that you were directly involved with these guys. It was quite a close interaction. How did this come about that you met Giuliani and became so involved?
I mean, it was just a perfect storm, as they call it. I knew Trump prior to Giuliani. I had a much closer relationship with Donald Trump prior to Giuliani, but then in the summertime of 2018, I was introduced to Giuliani officially because we were going to do a business deal together, a company that I established called Fraud Guarantee. Fraud Guarantee was an insurance company that I set up against fraud at the time, and I wanted Giuliani to be partners to help us with the underwriters because it was very complicated. Unbeknownst to me, Giuliani was having complete crazy financial problems. He was going through a divorce at the time, and he just signed up with Donald Trump to work for free and lost a $7 million contract with Greenberg Traurig. So he was in dire straits and needed money, and I was the perfect mark for him. And we ended up giving $500,000. He did nothing for it. Ended up stealing the money basically, and I still to this day don't know how he got away with it, and the DOJ never prosecuted him for it. And after that, I mean, we became like butt buddies every day together, Yankee games, traveling New York, Washington, Florida. And through this whole time, I mean, yes, we were constantly, Ukraine was on our minds in conversation, me because I was from Ukraine and because we were trying to do business in Ukraine and we had lots of information, me and my partner, of different rumors that were going around that were pro-Republican mega conversations. And Giuliani at the time was on a search to find the fake Manafort ledger and also the DNC servers at the time. So our worlds kind of collided at the time.
Let me slow you down there. The DNC servers, because the New York Times had said let's just take it back a second, because again, for people who don't realize how pivotally involved you are here, I'm not sure who publishes the byline Times, but this is talking about Ukraine's pivotal role in the Trump-Putin deal. And this talks about the Frank Project, the New York Times reporting on the DNC hack. And it lists the key players: Paul Manafort, who you just mentioned, Hunter Biden, who everybody's heard of, Alexander Onyeshenko, all these really big name people. Richard Gates, who was the deputy chair of the campaign and later was a member of Trump's cabinet. Viktor Yanukovych was the president of Ukraine. Petro Poroshenko, also after the Euromaidan. And then here you are, Lev Parnas. So you're not some peripheral guy here. It's quite amazing.
No, and that's the whole thing. I mean, the reason why a lot of the country doesn't know about me, hasn't heard about me, is because that was the whole game plan for Donald Trump, Bill Barr, and the MAGA crowd. That was to silence me, bury my information, and that is why Bill Barr did what he did, and I was arrested the way I was arrested.
Did what he did. What did he do?
Arrest me. Arrested me on made-up charges. If you recall, I went to prison on charges that were superseded afterwards. But the original charge that I was arrested on was to get rid of the U.S. ambassador with unindicted co-conspirator one, who happened to be Congressman Pete Sessions at the time. So it was a rush to judgment. It was a political ploy. Bill Barr, a lot of people don't know that Bill Barr traveled to the Southern District the day of my arrest to make sure that everything went smoothly. Since when does the Attorney General of the United States travel to an office, a prosecutor's office, because of an arrest?
But didn't they arrest you in Dulles Airport? Why were you prosecuted in the Southern District of New York and not D.C.?
Yeah. And the funny part, I mean, Rudy Giuliani was supposed to be on that flight with me. He canceled 5 hours prior to it.
But do we know why they shifted the prosecution to Southern District of New York rather than District of Columbia?
It was always from Southern District of New York. They were following me the whole time. And that's another thing. Why arrest me at the airport? They could have arrested me at the Trump Hotel at any moment while I was there the whole time with Rudy Giuliani. They arrested us when we were away from Giuliani, Trump, and everybody else, when we were by ourselves. And then they did the smear campaign. At first, the media didn't know who I was. And if you take a look in the beginning, I mean, the media campaign tried to smear me into thinking that I'm some kind of Russian asset, infiltrate Trump's campaign, and they tried to get rid of the U.S. ambassador. When they all along knew, because this is the FBI, this is the DOJ, Southern District, they know all along that I was working for Trump, not the Russians. They know all along all my evidence. This investigation was going on for a year. And Bill Barr, as soon as he came into office, from the first day he came into office, this investigation was handed over to him because it was high priority security, because Rudy Giuliani was involved and he was the president's attorney. And Bill Barr was following this investigation the whole time. When the whistleblower complaint came out and named me and Igor as Rudy's henchmen in Ukraine, Bill Barr understood that we were going to be dragged in front of the Congress and then we would have to talk about everything we saw. And Bill Barr knew that everything that we were handing over and everything we saw at the time was a bunch of bullshit that right now the Congress is trying to use to, confuse the American public. So Bill Barr, what's the best way to shut somebody up? Arrest them and seal the documents.
So you believe Bill Barr did that to benefit Donald Trump because he's a Donald Trump stooge?
At that time, he was full force Donald Trump. You got to understand, Jason, a lot of people in Trump's world didn't like Trump, but thought they were smarter than Trump, and they knew better how to deal with that position. Bill Barr was one of those people. His interests aligned with Trump. He never liked Trump, didn't agree with Trump, but he had certain interests that aligned. And then when Trump got into it, he thought he could protect Trump by making me the scapegoat, getting all my information about Ukraine, sealing it. Because just think about it. If I didn't go to court with my attorney to fight, to have the judge unseal the stuff that Southern District and the FBI took from me, you would never know any of this. The impeachment committee would never receive it.
Would never know any of what specifically?
Of all the corruption that was going on and the pressure campain on
what Zelensky corruption going on where specifically?
I mean, basically, I was the guy on the ground that Donald Trump said to. Remember when he withheld the military aid? I'm the one that gave the message May 11th of 2019.
What message? To who?
To Vladimir Zelensky, chief of staff, that if he does not announce an investigation into the Bidens, there will be no military aid to Ukraine, and Vice President Pence is not going to attend the inauguration.
And you also mentioned during the congressional testimony that you personally arranged the phone call between Zelensky and Donald Trump that was used in the second impeachment, right?
Yeah, I was the intricate part. I was involved in all the talks, conversations between the chief of staff, Yermak, who was Zelensky's, and Rudy, and everybody else that was involved.
Mm-hmm.
I traveled with Rudy to Spain to meet Yermak. I met with Rudy and Kurt Volker, one of the three amigos, discussing about the call and what should be said on the call and how it's going to go. I even have text messages of Rudy texting me saying that the call just went great. I'm going to fill you in everything after he spoke to Zelensky's people.
And what about, one of the people who was present during that phone call was Vinman. Are you friends with Alexander Vinman?
I've never met Alexander Vinman. It's funny. Our stories are very similar. We both immigrated here around 1976. Our paths took us different ways. He went to the military. I ended up growing up on the streets. And 50 years later, here we are, both trying to save our country and our democracy in different ways. He's a hero. I mean, it took a lot to stand up and come out with that and say what, in that position, tell the world what he heard, knowing that he was going to get a lot of heat coming from it, lose his job. His brother lost his job. So, I mean, Alexander Vinman's a true hero. And,
Are you sure he's not a traitor to both the United States and Ukraine? He was paid something like $171,000 by the Lawfare Institute the same year he testified against Trump. They claim he worked 40 hours a week for them. When I asked him about that, he said the evidence was in a press release. The press release said that they hired him, never provided any evidence that he was working there 40 hours a week. So I think there's a lot of evidence that suggests that Alexander Vinman is a treacherous liar. I don't have that information ready at my fingertips, but we've looked at it here on the show previously. We can come back to that.
So listen, I don't know about where he worked or where he did or his past or his present. I could tell you one thing, and this is had to do with a lot of people that come out, whistleblowers, people that come out from the other side and tell the truth, and they're always prosecuted because of their past, because they're either have criminal records or stuff like that. But you have to take a look at what take everything else aside. He could be the worst person in the world. But by him coming out and saying that transcript, President Trump.
But this was the lie that he told. See, here's Alexander Vinman. 40 hours a week is what they say, and he's paid $171,000 from the Lawfare Institute. And you're familiar with Lawfare, right?
Right, but what I'm saying to you, what does that really... What does that have to do with
Well, he never worked there, and they paid him a six-figure salary, and he seems to have lied under oath when he testified against Trump, but we'll come back to that. I want to talk about the DNC server, because you're telling us that you were sent there specifically to search for that thing, New York Times.
No, Jason, I never said. I said Rudy was looking for that. Yeah, right. I never searched for the DNC servers, no.
You didn't. Before we continue, I do want to make sure people know you've written an entire book about this, and people should get it and read the book and understand your side of the story. It's called Shadow Diplomacy, Lev Parnas and his wild ride from Brooklyn to Trump's inner circle. People can get it here on Amazon. It's very highly rated, 27 ratings. And so it looks like you've self-published this book on Amazon. I'm surprised somebody wouldn't pick this up and publish it for you.
Well, a lot of people want to pick it up, but a lot of people have their own political companies' versions and wanted certain things censored, and I want to get the whole truth. The reason I wrote the book was because there's so much to the story that happened in Trump's world for the 4 years I was there that you can't tell it all in one interview, podcast. So I decided to write the book to make sure the public and the people could get the full story, because we speak about Ukraine, but what people don't know, I mean, what happened with Venezuela. I mean, I was one of the key I was on the phone call with Nicolas Maduro and Pete Sessions and Rudy Giuliani
wait a minute
Trump.
Now.
So
how did Trump and the people around him take some guy they met at a political rally who's a businessman and just get him involved in all these high-level diplomatic conversations? It seems quite odd.
Well, that's the message that I want to get across. I mean, just think about what he would do if he gets into office again. He chooses people.
But how did you insinuate yourself in there?
I didn't insinuate myself in there. I mean, I was trying to do business. I mean, I was donating to political campaigns and trying to get my energy company off the ground. And because I decided that it would be a benefit for me to meet these energy guys because they were primarily all Republicans and in Trump world, and that was how my way of meeting them. When I became very close with Rudy Giuliani, and we became such close associates, one evening while we were sitting at the Grand Havana room, he gets a call from one of his investigators, Bart Schwartz, with the whistleblower from Ukraine, giving him certain information. And that was the night. That was the night that we showed him the video, the infamous video of Joe Biden saying he'd get rid of the prosecutor, or I won't give you $1 billion. And when Rudy saw that video, his eyes lit up and said, "We got him. We got Joe." And next thing you know, he called Trump. And 2 weeks later, we were at the White House, where Trump basically told me, "You're doing a great job. Continue it." And off we were to Ukraine.
So they brought you in because you were uncovering extremely high-level intelligence and obviously very familiar with the politics in a region that perhaps they didn't know that much about. And certainly we have had Democrats famously playing in that space. We know that Bill Clinton was pretty close to Victor Pinchuk. Have you ever had any interaction with Mr. Pinchuk?
Pinchuk was one of the, he's an oligarch in Ukraine. I personally did not interact with him, but he was one of the people we were looking into because of articles like this. This is exactly what stuff that we were looking to because of articles like this. There was a conspiracy theory that the Clintons, the Obamas, and now the Bidens basically controlled Ukraine for themselves. And then George Soros put in all of these ambassadors and stuff like that. So that was the overall conspiracy theory, but the middle of it was Joe Biden, Hunter Biden.
Mm-hmm. But, I mean, you keep saying it's a conspiracy theory, but we have all of this evidence that the United States was very involved in doing all kinds of things in Ukraine. The FBI set up this thing, NABU, which was supposed to be the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, but it basically was just the FBI in Ukraine, wasn't it?
No, absolutely not. I mean, again, that was they even told us that there's FBI agents sitting in NABU offices that I literally went to look with my own eyes to see if I saw any FBI agents there. I mean, no, that's not the case. NABU was set up by help from the United States Embassy. It was a way to help up the Ukrainians after 2014 to root out corruption. Because they were in dire straits of money, and the only way the West, United States, IMF, or any other country was willing to help them out and get them out of their default was if they would get rid of corruption. And NABU was set up to basically get rid of corruption.
Isn't it strange for the FBI to be operating overseas? Aren't they supposed to be a domestic law enforcement agency? Why are they getting involved in Ukraine?
I mean, not really. I mean, the FBI followed me all over the country. The FBI follows, when there's I'm not going to comment on that. I don't think it's strange, but I don't know what their duties are or not. I mean, if you know better, that is what it is. But I'm not going to comment.
I'm sure I don't. But the other guy that was dealing with Giuliani, did you ever meet this guy, Andrei Telenko?
Yeah, I mean, I never met him personally, but I know him I know of him very well. Yeah, this
what do
is
you
one
know
of
about?
the. He's one of the Russian assets that was very close to John Solomon. That Pierce was basically, I didn't know at the time, but he was one of Solomon's sources. He called him, and then eventually Solomon pushed him to Giuliani, and eventually Derkach, and we
He
saw the
says
whole
he's never
video.
met Derkach, and he
Who's
also
never met
said
Who said
Telenko
that?
has never met Derkach, and he's Ukrainian. He's not Russian.
What does it mean that he just said that? I mean, you're going to believe a person that's an indicted that right now is by Trump's own Treasury Department, a guy that's sanctioned for spreading Russian misinformation.
I don't think he was sanctioned for spreading Russian misinformation. I think he was sanctioned because he was telling the truth, and he was a diplomat working in the Ukrainian embassy when people like Alexander Chalupa came in there and asked Telenko to dig up dirt on Trump. Do you know Alexander Chalupa?
Absolutely. And again, you're going off of a word of Andrei Telenko. Can you show me some evidence where Alexander Chalupa was digging dirt on the Bidens or anybody else?
You know Alexandra Chalupa, you said, right?
I don't know her personally. I know of her just like Telenko. I've never met her personally. She used to
Uh-huh.
be, I think, the Ukrainian ambassador to the U.S. If I'm correct, right?
That might be correct. She's a DNC operative, and she was all around this whole DNC server thing. It's interesting. Telenko had some interesting details that caused me to believe he was telling the truth. Now, you told us that you're trying to do business. You've been a prolific independent businessman. There's 45 different similarly named companies here, Mr. Associated Group. What are all these different? This is an amazingly large number of corporations and LLCs for people to start.
That's like I said, I'm a businessman. I'm 52 years old, and I've done a lot of business. And I mean, you could take it however you want it, but there's nothing illegal about doing different companies.
Oh, I didn't suggest that there was. What about this PC Edge Foundation, the nonprofit that got started that was supposed to eradicate illiteracy by donating money to other nonprofits? What was the idea behind that?
At that time, it was a publicly traded company that I was the CEO of. It was back then when there was no
The nonprofit. The nonprofit.
No, you're asking me what it was about. So I'm telling you, I owned the company, and then I decided to spin off a foundation to help illiteracy for kids.
But what happened to it? It was dissolved because
I mean,
there was
eventually
never
it was dissolved.
an annual report given. And how was it going to eradicate illiteracy by giving money to other charities? That just seems like a way to funnel tax-free money around to other tax-exempt organizations, no?
I mean, if you want to spread conspiracy theories, yeah. I mean,
I'm just asking a question. I'm not spreading a conspiracy theory. I'm just asking.
But Jason, how could you funnel money if no money ever went in there? So you're
Well,
right
that's
now.
why I'm asking you, because it looks very strange to me, and it seems like you know more about these things.
Right? There's nothing strange. There's nothing strange when you have an idea, you want to open a nonprofit to help, but you don't have any money to do it, and you close it up. What's so strange about that?
I don't know. I thought you had a lot of money.
I mean,
let me ask you about
Jason,
another guy.
The strange part would be there is if you said that there was money going in there and then there was no
I
filing.
didn't say there was money going in there. I just said I saw a nonprofit that seemed a little strange. Let me ask you about something else. So you were involved in real estate development. And by the way, I want to tell people that, when I was a kid, you and I are essentially the same age. I think you're 2 months older than me. And happy recent birthday, by the way. When I was a kid, growing up in New York, we'd go to Hebrew school on Sunday, and they would tell us all the time about Jewish families in the Soviet Union. We would have food drives and carnivals to raise money and everything like that. So when I hear these stories about families that came from the Soviet Union to Brooklyn, it really resonates with me because I remember that time in the United States and communism in the Soviet Union and the Jewish families that fled persecution there. Another guy who has a similar background is Felix Sader. You know Felix, right?
Yep, know Felix very well.
How long have you known him?
Well, let me ask you a question, Jason. The topic of our conversation is to talk about all kinds of people in the DNC, RNC, or would you like to talk about what happened with Ukraine, Trump, and my testimony at the...
I want to talk about all of this stuff. I'm interested to know what your relationship is to Felix Sader. Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I could talk about somebody that I know from the past. The best way to talk about Felix Sader is I recommend everybody go read my book. I write about Felix Sader in my book. But I don't think right now is it. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I'm going to definitely get it because I want to hear that.
That's why, Jason, I said it's better to read the book because, with the limited time that I have here with you today, I think I have another maybe 10, 15 minutes left.
I just want to get to the stuff that's not in the book because this is a cooperation agreement that Felix Sader signed with Andrew Weissman in 1988.
Jason,
and he then became the most prolific FBI asset in the history of FBI assets. Have you ever signed a cooperation agreement like this with Andrew Weissman?
No, I've never signed a cooperation agreement with anybody. But since when am I expert on Felix Sader and Adam Weissman? Cooperation agreement. I mean, this is just a foolish conversation.
Andrew Weissman. It's not a bullshit conversation. You said you've known Felix Sader for a long time. Felix Sader seems to be a sinister criminal and a liar.
So did Donald Trump, Jason. So did Donald Trump. He used to work with Donald Trump.
No, actually, he took an office in Trump Tower with Michael Cohen and insinuated himself into Donald Trump's circle in the same way that you did, Lev. I think you're a traitor to the United States and to Ukraine, and you're spreading bullshit. Right here on this show, motherfucker. See you,
You're a
Lev.
fucking idiot.
You're a fucking liar, bro. Have a
Piece
nice
of
day.
shit.
Are you hanging up or what? Fucking asshole. Anyway, there's Lev. In his own words, he's full of shit. He got pretty nervous when we started asking him about Felix Sader, who's also a motherfucker. Thanks for watching, everybody. Yeah, he wrote about him in his book. He knows him. This fucking guy is on the same program as Sader, and I allege that everything he has said and done is a total lie. Andrei Telenko is an honorable guy. We just got Lev Parnas. He's a fucking liar. Thanks for watching, everybody. Sponsor the show, please. They're trying to shut it down.